Oh no, we're all right.
So yeah, so many people won't actually know, but I think, George, I'm actually responsible for the not only the reporter you are, but the man you are now.
Um, I mean, yeah, I would agree because, well, I mean, well, it was years ago, wasn't it, when I started? So,
Yeah,
when I was what, 18, just turned 18.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
I
I want to get
really
into
wanted
it.
to, I really wanted to get into it, and I was like, right, who do I message? Because obviously, I was just starting out. I was on Twitter. I was like a fucking COD fan. Am I allowed to swear? Is this a thing?
Come on, mate.
Right,
It's
yeah, I was
my
gonna
show.
say, yeah. I was like a COD fanboy at the time. I was like looking around. I was like, what can I do? Um, so I messaged you originally because I saw you and I was like, oh, this guy's like proper up there. He's got like 800 followers or whatever. I'm like, fucking hell, mate, give me some advice because I know you just tweeted saying, I remember the day because I think Phoebe told me about it. Uh, Dualism. She told me she was like, oh, you should message him because he's like looking to help people or whatever. I was like, fucking hell, mate, get me involved. So I DM'd you and I was like, right, so can you help me out? I want to get started in this. I want to like learn about it. And then you were like, yeah, etc., etc. And I started to like know you a bit better, and then it sort of just went from there, right? But then
Yes.
the problem is because I was a fucking terrible writer. I got criticized a lot, which was fair enough. Most of it was justified. Like I wasn't like a good reporter. I wasn't like going out and doing stuff. It was very much just like regurgitating news kind of thing. And then, sometimes like shit wasn't accurate and it was just bad. And it was really bad. Um, but then just like as it carried on, I think it was like towards the latter half of my like when I was just turning 19, it was just before. So I think it was like January to March. I was just getting bombarded where it was like Discord all the time, like you're shit, you're terrible. Not from you, but like from just other people.
Sometimes from me.
Sometimes from you, yeah. It was just like fucking hell. You need to work on this. You're fucking awful at this. All this kind of shit. And it was just like all at once, and I was just like, look, fuck this. So I just left everything. I remember I left like every Discord I was in. I stopped messaging. I think I stopped messaging you. I stopped fucking following you on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, fuck this, fuck everybody. I just went on my own way, and then that was when I started at Dot, and
Mm.
I just ignored everyone. I was like, fuck this, I can't deal with people like giving me this kind of shit because it was so early in my career, right?
Mm.
Um, when I just didn't know how to handle anything and I couldn't stand up for myself because I didn't have a platform. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty rough at the start. It was
But
pretty
like you're
rough.
missing out like a couple of key details, and this is where I want to hold myself accountable because I remember one time we spoke, and this is why I say jokingly that I'm responsible for what you're doing now, which is obviously bullshit. But even though there may be a little bit of motivation in there from it, I don't know. You'll have to tell me. But once where I don't know if it was like 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. or something, but like I was overextending myself in. This is how I perceive it, and you can let me know. But
Yeah,
I overextended myself in terms of the not mentorship position, but just giving advice or feedback or whatever. And I was probably trying to be more like other people than I am myself. So trying to be more like the more outspoken, upfront people in the industry. And I basically at one point said something to the effect of "You will never make it. You are shit. You will never
something like
make
that.
it."
Yeah,
Like 3 a.m., but I was shouting. Like I remember this vividly.
something like that.
And I know it's a while ago because I go to bed at like 9, half 9 now. But
Mm.
yeah, it was up at like 3 a.m. one morning, and I went way too far. And I think what it was I overextended myself, and you didn't receive it too kindly. Something along those lines, right? Which I mean, like I didn't, shouldn't have probably said what I said. I can't remember what it was now. But then I went into that like just mad outburst of absolute fuckery where I look back now and I cringe. I just want to say I apologize for that shit. Though if it has helped you in any way, then you're welcome.
Yeah,
On the flip side, nah. But yeah, I look back and I'm like that was not the way to act whatsoever. But something I truly am happy to see is like you've broken more stories than me. You've probably doubled my followers by now. like you've gone from esports, one of the biggest publications, to Upcomer, one of the biggest up and coming ones, no pun intended there.
Mhm.
So despite, as you say, maybe not being entirely receptive to feedback sometimes and shutting yourself off, you've obviously you've made something of what you started relatively recently, in a sense. It's
Yeah.
only a couple of years or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did it as a defense, right? I did it as I closed myself off. I didn't want people to, keep talking shit about me. I didn't want people to be like, you're doing this wrong. I didn't want any of that to affect me. I just wanted to speak to my editor, and that was it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it ruined interpersonal relationships with me. I didn't want to go to events. I didn't want to see people, because I didn't want to sit there and be like, oh, this guy, not just you, but like other people were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this journalist doesn't like me, or this member of talent doesn't like me, anything like that. It was really embarrassing for me. But I was a teenager at the time, 18, 19, going on like 20. It was really like tough for me. And I would say it helped me because, it sort of got me to the point where it's just like, look, you can either sit here and let these people come at you, or, talk to you in this way, and you can eventually get to a point where you are doing better than your previous self.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Yeah.
like to compare to others. I don't like doing that. As long as you're doing better than what you were, then
Mm-hmm.
you've made it. This is the kind of thing that I had, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like, um, as long as I'm doing better than what I was, which I am, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
then that's all I needed, right? And it's every time I broke a story, because I just kept going. It was like I had to push, I had to do more, I had to do just better, and I had to better myself every single time. No matter what people said. I know a lot of people criticized me. Said I wasn't going to be anything and all this kind of shit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like I can either sit there and be like, oh well, maybe I won't ever be shit. Just
Mm-hmm.
stop it and then quit and move forever into obscurity.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can just say, yeah, well, fuck you. I'll just do better myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You
that
went
goes
on
to
to
like
like
everyone.
that's like your egotistical athlete shit, where it's like someone says you won't win the championship, and you're like, oh yeah, watch, I'm gonna put a
Yeah,
game on my
exactly. It's
fucking
that kind of thing,
back.
Yeah. It's that kind of thing. But it's like if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have been where I am today. I didn't get any. I wasn't like at a point where people were like, "Oh yeah, you should keep going," because that wasn't what I had. I think
Mm,
it's the same for most people,
mhm.
where I speak to these journalists now, and they have a lot of support networks, especially at Upcomer. They've got like me, they've got a lot of other management where we're like, you can have these like courses, you can speak to us, all these kinds of things. I didn't have any of that. I didn't.
No,
I
no,
don't know if it's the same for you. I was self-taught. I had to mentor
exactly.
myself. Nobody really sat me down and was like, look, this is how you do it. This is how you get to reporting. This is who you talk to, kind of thing. You just
Hmm.
sort of have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
um and people will shit on you no matter what. um
Well, it's the internet, right?
exactly. It's
Yeah.
what we signed up for, right?
Yes.
um
Yes. And
but
as well, like it's strange because we're just serial bullshitters who pull stuff out of our asses as well. If you listen to
mm,
some people as well, even when you get like the scoop and you we I think we can both like on like the amount of scoops we've missed out on because we just weren't 100% on it. Where you've been like
yeah.
95 and you just need an extra shred of like one more person corroborating or like see
Hmm.
one more screenshot of an email or something like that. So the amount that don't get over the line where we're pretty comfortable with the fact that they're accurate, but we don't put out. So it should like suggest to people really that anything that does make it to the surface, anything that does make it live, we're like 100% with, or else we're not going to
Yeah, it's
go
been
for it.
like
But yeah,
thoroughly investigated.
yes,
That's what we
but you
do.
still get that. You still get like a reputation. Like my header on Twitter has been for like 2 years now, where it's like I'm getting played like a fiddle. All my sources are like
Oh
Immortals
yeah, the
people.
Immortals thing.
When I
Yeah.
can say I didn't speak to anyone from Immortals when I was
Mm,
reporting on that stuff, and that was when like I was going up on that story against like Jacob Wolf. So he's like the name that had been around for 4 or 5 years, and
yeah.
I was only around a year and a half, I think. I mean, I'm like only 4 years in
Yeah. Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
and as you say, like no training. I've got books which I haven't read fully, to be completely honest. It's all like and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but I'm not part of any unions, anything like that. It's just kind of
Mhm.
it was my interest
No degree in it, like either. I'm
no,
the
not at
same.
all, not at
So
all. It's just like your interest in the scene, and I think I speak for both of us, where it's like you want the scene to be better or more transparent,
yeah, of
and
course.
then it can become better by being transparent. I think you kind of have to. At the moment where esports is being transparent is almost shitting on the industry in a sense because people are hiding some crap stuff.
Yeah,
But in hopes of rebuilding. So when you say like no degree and such, you did a degree in philosophy, right, and
yeah,
graduated not too long ago.
yeah. So I got like a 2-1 in that. So I mean, I got what I needed to do.
Yes.
I hated it really. You know,
Ha-
it's
yeah.
like it's not what I wanted to do. I had no interest in it. You know, that kind of thing. And if anybody does listen to this, that is because I've had a few people message me and they're like, I'm going to Kent, which was the university that I went to, and I'm interested in esports. What do I do? I think I had like 2 or 3 people DM me
Mm.
that. And I would say to them, if you're not going for a degree you want to go for, then just don't do it and just go your own path, because it's a lot of money. That's
Mm-hmm.
why most people don't do it, is because it's a lot of money. I'm like 50 grand in debt and I have to pay it back,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Just for a piece of paper, it's really fucking pointless, to be honest. And
How was it fed into the work that you do now at all, though?
I mean, I would say I mean, I guess you could say it's like analytical work, that kind of stuff helps.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of essays where it was just constantly writing and
Mm-hmm.
trying to sort out your grammar and things like that. So I guess that's like really the only benefit. But I
Right.
mean,
Well, maybe though, because so I didn't do a degree, so maybe I'm just speaking anecdotally through friends and stuff, right?
mhm.
But what about like the discipline in which you showed by sticking with it for 3 years,
I
even
think
even
that's the
though
main
you didn't
point.
want to do
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. It's like the skills and the like ability to actually do it and get a good grade in it is sort of that's sort of how it's going to
That's the
benefit you,
achievement in itself, just getting
Yeah,
through
yeah,
it, as
yeah,
opposed to
exactly.
what it enables you to do afterwards.
It's like, unless you want to be like a fucking lawyer at a London firm and you studied at Oxford, kind of thing, it really doesn't matter. You could do
Right.
whatever you want. Um, and I think the one thing that does annoy me, I don't know if you share the same opinion, where it's like you see people wanting to do like esports degrees and stuff like that. I know this is like a really hot topic or whatever, because I
Mm-hmm.
know some people really want to do an esports degree. I've never personally seen the benefit of it,
No.
but I guess with the way we're moving, it could be a thing. Like I guess, but it's I don't know. I don't know what's going on,
It's
but
hard to say because the thing is, esports isn't a job.
no,
It isn't a trade. So
no.
for me, if you want to get into esports journalism, you're probably better off studying journalism
Mm.
than doing the esports degree. Because if I'm speaking about the one at Staffs, like Staffordshire, which is I think that was maybe like the first mover on the esports degree stuff. I
Yeah,
think that it's been going 3 years now. Like we had the first like wave of full graduates this year, I believe, albeit online.
yeah, yeah,
Theirs is a lot of like events work. So that suggests that the only facet of esports is the competition side, where obviously there's so many opportunities for remote work now in social media,
hmm
graphics, reporting, tournament ops. You can people have been moving online and making that work, working for the developers. Like there's so many different gigs now, for it to only be about events, like running events
yeah.
and
I mean,
maybe arranging brackets and creating rule sets and stuff.
yeah. I mean,
That's applicable to one set of skills that you could probably utilize. But esports is a small part of it is competition now.
yeah. I mean, the less
Everything else is on the
options.
periphery.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the less options you have, you're only limiting yourself, right? So it's like, if you see an interest in it, then you would probably be better suited going into the facets of what makes esports, right? Like
Hmm.
business, economics,
Hmm.
journalism, those kinds of things are much better suited.
And they're
And
much
when,
more like you can transition to other
yeah,
industries with
exactly.
those
Like
very
if
easily.
esports fails, then you have a degree in something which is applicable outside,
Hmm. Yeah.
this isn't a sustainable industry. This isn't a profit making industry. No company makes a significant amount of money yet. I guess
I would
that
say
would
no
be the argument.
organization.
No, no, that's
There
what I
are
mean. No
there are
organization. Yeah,
companies,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
There are companies, of course, that profit.
yeah.
But I meant organizations like
Mm.
esports teams and stuff. Salaries are too high. These kinds of things. Like it will just get to a point where teams are forking out so much money And it's just never going to become sustainable because unless we have a significant increase in viewership, or there's another way where it turns into like a sort of subscription based system or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I could see that potentially working, but
It's like the UFC
exactly,
in
yeah,
that sense, yeah.
like a box office kind of thing
Mm.
where potentially, let's say for Valorant, for example, I don't know how much you follow it, but let's just say two of the biggest teams in the grand finals.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that would be like the box office match,
Right.
but in order to get that, you have to pay some sort of subscription. But the whole event could be free. That's fine.
Mm.
Or like the previous matches. The matches that are sort of less important, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how that would work.
No.
But again, it's like
that's not for us to solve, fortunately.
No. It's not. It's not. It's Riot's problem. It's Valve's problem. These guys are intertwined, and they need the esports teams. Otherwise, their esports don't function.
Mm-hmm.
League is the biggest esport in the world, and we've got teams that don't make money. We've got salaries that are too inflated, and we've got coaches that don't do their jobs properly. All these kinds of things. There's no regulations. They can say they have regulations, but it's just
if they don't enforce them, then
yeah, it's pointless.
Just nothing. But like so on the topic of like salaries, quickly then, are we in agreement that if all salaries were public knowledge, like say in football, where basically we have like the approximate knowledge of how much transfers are and stuff? So if we're operating upon that assumption, are you privy when you're doing roster moves?
Yeah, of course, I know the majority of people's
some
salaries.
Financial details.
Yeah.
So if so, is that something you're going to go to? Because if that can greatly benefit one part of the industry, so say Valorant esports, maybe then CS:GO will look at it like the orgs, because they're in many of these titles, right, and go, all right, there are some benefits to this.
Yeah,
it'd probably take an orchestrated effort, right, where everyone puts it out. If you're just doing like 2 players from a team and then 1 from another and then 4 from another, it's a bit disjointed. So where do you stand on that?
Well, I think the problem is that it can be used as community leverage against these teams, right? Like we saw it with Cloud9, when they were signing players for millions, and then they exited the esport after like a few months, after years of being in it. They were like, oh, the community were like, why the fuck would you spend millions? All these kinds of things, because they knew how much the players were earning and how much they cost. I can guarantee you, if the community knew how much some of these 17, 16-year-olds are being paid monthly, they would be like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, what?
Right.
Like, why don't I become a professional
life-changing sums in
it's ridiculous.
no time at
like,
all.
It's money that 99% of people will never see in their lifetime. And I can even say about like my salary and stuff. I'm comfortable talking about my salary. I think it's fucking ridiculous. It's really high. But it's just not sustainable at all if you keep going the way you're going. Especially in Valorant. I mean, in journalism, it's another story because I would say it's one thing to get views, but then it's another thing to be like important in what you report and stuff. Like I think my reporting is very important to the scene. I think Valorant especially doesn't have a dedicated reporter. So I wanted to sort of fill that niche, that gap, and people seem to be enjoying it. When you started doing like business properly for like, what was it? I can't remember the name of it.
ESI?
Esports? Yeah, ESI. That was it. Sorry, it's just faded into obscurity in my mind at this point.
Yes,
ever
same.
since like, I don't have a fucking clue anyone who works there. When you were at ESI, you started business, and then you got into reporting business, and then it was like optic, and you got that big report kind of thing. It's like you fill the niche.
Yeah.
And then that probably landed you a job at Dexerto kind of thing, right?
That is very true. The fact that I was business dedicated and one of maybe 3 or 4 that do it decently.
Yeah,
like
I don't know
basically
anybody
got me
else
the job.
that does. I mean,
Well, Jacob,
Kevin Hitt maybe. Jacob is now
Kevin
getting
Hitt
into
does.
business.
Jacob dabbles. They're recording this, which will probably go live on this date on 3rd of August, somewhere in August. He broke like the FTX LCS deal, for example, just got confirmed straight after. So he does do business reporting, but it's not like his sole beat, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah, there's not much competition on that front. Kevin does some good work. There are some good people at Observer, but like not many people who break stories. It's like Kevin, me, and Jacob at least in the West. I'd say
yeah. I mean, I don't know anybody else that reports business because it's such a it's a
it's
small niche.
yeah, and it can
It's
be
not
dry.
this is the thing where it's like I benefit because Valorant is a massive game. It's a growing
Mhm.
esport kind of thing, and people will always follow roster moves. It doesn't matter what fucking title
Yeah.
it's in.
Well, why did you get into roster moves then? Because like, what was the first story you broke? Was it a roster move in
It
like Call of Duty
was.
or something for Rush B?
Oh
Or
god, it was. I mean, it was years ago, but I think it was a COD move.
yeah, that's what I'm
Um,
thinking. I just can't remember which because it was, I think, a smaller one.
yeah, I
It
can't
wasn't like
remember.
Scum
I
going
think
to
it
like
was it
Envy for a
was
week
it was
or
something
whatever.
like Mind Freak, like the Australian
Right? Yeah,
org.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was something about that, or it was like oh no, I can remember it now. It was Reedy to like Epsilon, I think,
Okay.
something
Oh,
like that.
Epsilon. Oh wow.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's so fucked. But the sources I gained from that was what got me my Epsilon report, which was
Mm-hmm.
what I would say, well, not skyrocketed it, but was
It
one of
put you
my
on the
first
map for sure.
reports. Yeah, it was my first report ever, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like a proper investigation type thing.
So why
Um,
roster moves? Why is that your main beat now? And we'll then say
well,
why
I would
Valorant as well.
say roster moves now, just because first of all, I'm dedicated to Valorant now. It's what I enjoyed ever since CS and the COVID era. Both things combined sort of deployed. What's the word? Sort of depleted my love for the game. So I got into Valorant and I started enjoying that. Sometimes I play the game myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just I love the scene. I think it's very healthy, and I like the people involved, and the players, the fans. They're all very receptive and inclusive. They've done a very good job of that, especially I think Riot's done a good job.
Mm-hmm.
We've got like women's tournaments now, and people will
Is that game changers? Is that what it's
yeah,
called?
game
Yeah.
changers. It includes like marginalized genders kind of thing. These people are very kind and nice, and I haven't had to deal with anything like toxic wise or I mean, I check my emails and there's a few people telling me I should kill myself, but other than that, it's
It's part for the
pretty
course.
standard, But that's about it. That's just that's just what happens when you're
Mm-hmm.
reporting some of these news. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just really enjoy it. It's fun. People like roster moves. It's always the sort of in thing. A few years ago, I was a huge fan of Decay when he was breaking CS news.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I want that to be me. This is fun. This is like, this is not only healthy because it gives orgs more impressions when it does actually happen. It just builds more hype, and
Yeah, I
I
was
always
gonna I
see
was
it as
gonna
a
ask
benefit.
why you think they're beneficial because I've had a hard time understanding it. I mean, if I look at it in sports terms, it makes more sense, especially if you look at like the Grealish and Kane and Haaland and stuff that's going on right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
People are dying for someone to break that story
Exactly. Yeah.
just to get there beforehand because look, like companies aren't transparent as a rule unless they're forced into
Mhm.
being transparent or they're a public company. So you think it's just like it's able to add a or like feed into the element of excitement for like the fans of these teams and fans
Yeah,
for the
of course.
individual
It's
players.
all a part of a story, really, isn't it? Like it's it all feeds into the beginning where I place my work is the beginning of things basically
Gets the ball
regarding
rolling.
teams.
Mm.
When people talk about storylines, they're like, oh, X was dropped from X or whatever, or it was reported that this team is moving to here, or this kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all sort of this storyline where they keep going through, and at the end, they were like, "Oh, was this a smart decision? Should I have done that? Why didn't I do that?" Kind of thing. Well, they had these options. Why didn't they go with these? Um, and I really like that. I really like being part of the story. Sometimes when I like watch a broadcast and like a caster's like, "Oh, so when." X player is being dropped from X. This is what happened, kind of thing. It makes me feel like I've contributed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's not the only thing I want to cover. I did cover
Right.
some. I did my most recent investigation, obviously regarding the spike. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah,
Um,
well, that's a weird one that I don't know if we should discuss publicly. But we
well,
can discuss
no,
that privately
because
afterwards.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I can't even. I don't even know if I could speak publicly about that fucking shit. So
Yes. Well, what I will say is, for anyone watching, is that people were aware of what was happening before, well before
yeah,
it went public. I can say
yeah,
that much. Yeah, that's safe.
yeah.
I think.
There was so many people. I mean, the problem is that some people are just and this doesn't just go for the Spike story. This goes for everything. People are scared
Mm-hmm.
as to what will happen if news comes out of anything happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this goes for salaries, this goes for decisions in the orgs, this goes for everything. And people are just worried, like, they're worried about facing the public, and it's our job to be like, right, well, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's going on, and people need to know about it.
Yeah,
This is
and then they can make their mind up from there.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's if you've done something bad, it's your fault.
Exactly. Well, they always say that. You always get called a piece of shit if you like break a story of someone doing something bad.
Yeah, I mean,
As if you committed the act. As if you reporting on them committing the
exactly.
act is worse than them committing the act. It's the
Yeah.
most arse about elbow way of ever addressing a situation.
Exactly. I mean, I've even had. I've pissed off players. I've pissed off everybody. Riot employees. I've fucked off almost everybody under the sun. But then there's just that's just a really small portion. Whereas the other portion, sometimes you even act as an agent where you can help these players. That's why Decay became one, because he had such a close relationship with these players that he was able to help them find teams and help them get orgs, these kinds of things.
Right.
I even find myself in situations where I have to do these kinds of things and communicate one thing to another and be the middleman kind of thing. But that's just part of the process, right?
I wonder if that gets a bit tricky for you, considering like you're supposed to be impartial.
It does,
and stuff,
yeah,
right?
it does, because I have to sit there and they're like, "Oh, what do you think I should do?" And I'm like, "I can't tell you."
Yeah,
like I can't help you with this kind of thing.
And like separating it as like I'm a friend or a confidant versus like I have to report on this. If you move somewhere, I'm reporting on you, mate. Like you don't want to cross the line,
right? It's difficult because it's like, for example, it's like if I tell you about this organization that are looking to get X player or whatever, that's fine and all. But if you come out, I'm reporting your move. You know what I mean? Like you're not privy to these kinds of things, right? And I've said that to people, and they're perfectly respectful, and that's just what's gonna happen, right? You can't be partial. You have to be impartial when it comes to things like this, and it's really important. And that was, these are like lessons that I learned, throughout the years of me being shit. I will admit, I was really bad at the start, and it just
we all are, mate. If that's any comfort.
Yeah, well, some people just get better quicker than others. Some people get worse. These kinds of things.
It's also about how much you apply yourself at the beginning.
It's about
So if you see it as like a feasible career route instantly, or if you're just doing it as a hobby, you're going to attack it with two different levels of like tenacity and poise, right? So I mean, it just depends. We've seen some people who've been around for years who've just not really done anything. Not really, whether that's because they haven't made the right relationships or put themselves out there, or maybe concentrated on the wrong things, conducted themselves incorrectly, or maybe in a way you wouldn't recommend, not incorrectly. Like all these things can factor in. But I want to go back quickly because I'm not saying you dodged it, but I feel like we got off topic. Like, how comes you don't report on like the salaries of players at the moment then?
Well, because I would say, I think in terms of like transfer news, where it's like, let's say, I don't know, let's just say, let's just give an example. I think it was like Tens moving to Sentinels from Cloud9, right? I reported the story quite a while ago. I can't remember. I think it was a few months ago now. And I got the figure wrong, I think, at that time.
Okay.
Because I was confirming it with like two different sources, I think. But it turns out after the fact that one of the sources was getting it from somebody else that was incorrect, kind of thing. Like it was like I can't confirm that through like 7 different grapevines, kind of thing, right? And I kind of learned my lesson the hard way in that sense, that I need to be more rigid in what I report, and it's just part of the learning process, really, because that's what we are. We're imperfect human beings, right? But it really taught me that I need to be very, very rigid. I can't be shoddy. People take me at my word. Whatever I say, that's just the price of being a journalist, right? That's just what happens. So I think it's very important when you discuss figures to get the figures correct. If the sources aren't directly from either the player or the organization, then it's not worth it in that sense.
Would you need to see like a contract? Would you need to see it in writing at this point?
Yeah, I think there's only been a time. It's like I can tell you, what I've been told in terms of the contracts.
Yeah.
Like certain players are on like 15k plus, like 8k plus. Some of these players are on ridiculous money per month, right? But I can't report certain things because it's either not confirmed or I haven't seen enough evidence to suggest that this is the case for this player, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
It is tough. It's one of the hardest things about the job, and fair enough. You could say, well, it's just not good enough reporting, whatever.
No, mate. I've been trying to get financial information on anything I can for the past 3 years.
Exactly. It's really hard.
Like getting your hands on like paperwork, you have to have like the best source network ever, and it probably has to be a disgruntled employee or player who's going to leak that.
There needs to be like a level of trust as well. If it's someone higher up, people could lose their jobs.
That takes a while to build, right?
Exactly. And it's the same for if organizations knew who my sources were, people would be out of teams, people would be out of jobs. These kinds of things. Like it's really damaging if stuff like this gets out. That's why you have to be trustworthy and build yourself as a journalist. I know, probably some of the best journalists even probably struggle to get financial information sometimes.
Yes.
Because it's such a privy, sort of source of information.
Well, the thing is, it actually exposes the true state of how things are.
Exactly,
so if I look at my job, so I have the financials of a very popular organization in terms of their revenue, their projected revenue for the next 3 years, how they're going to get it, right, and the kind of that and the exact streams in which they're getting it. But if I put that out, it's fucked. But that's only for one organization. But if it's a less successful, well, I can't even use the word successful, a less financially lucrative one, the one that can bring in some dollar, then putting those numbers out exposes that they are nowhere near as big as they portray themselves to be. So therefore, they will put that in a safe, throw away the key type thing, because the worst thing that can happen is their reputational tank, and they'll be taken less seriously than how they're like portraying themselves to be.
Yeah,
because most of these organizations, if they are profitable, that's through side businesses like agencies. So selling sponsorships against their players. Basically, their players are more useful as brand ambassadors than they are as actual competitors.
Of course.
So it's some of the hardest stuff I've ever seen. Even like Jacob today with the FTX LCS stuff, there's no financials attached to that, for example, which is interesting. When FTX were open about it with the TSM stuff, and that suggests to me they did that because they thought that was the biggest deal in esports. Why aren't they doing it with the LCS? Either Riot Games keeping it really close to the chest and they don't want anyone knowing their business, or it's not quite as big as other deals that are out there, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the figure looks really nice when you report it, like with TSM, right? I can't remember how much was it, like 210 million.
So 21 mil each year gets paid out.
Yeah, like it's a fucking huge number. And this is a 7-year deal with the LCS, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a lot of money involved, but is there the same amount of money that you did with TSM?
I'd say more, actually.
Well, even if there's more, then
it's a competition, mate.
Exactly.
I would hazard a guess. This is just like a semi-educational guess. It'll be between like 500 and 700 mil, I'd guess.
I mean,
because you've got to think about what they're projecting the LCS to grow like over the next 7 years. They're thinking it's going to be like a generational sports property, right?
I don't understand why though, because viewership has declined. It's
nothing like LEC, right?
No, LEC's like going up. LCS is going down. Yeah. Nobody's watching this shit anymore. I mean, that's a bit of an over exaggeration, but like nobody cares to watch this.
It's
league
losing significance.
Yeah, it is. It's losing relevancy.
Probably like the LFL, like the French league, is close, if not beating, like the viewership of the LCS at this point.
I think there was like I can't remember what region it was, but there was like a region that had like hundreds of thousands of views for its final. And I can't remember
the LFL, the French one,
was it the LFL?
K-Corp, I think.
Yeah, and it just like overtook every record in the LCS.
And that's a minor league, a European regional league.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because what we're seeing is that there are now sort of smaller European countries, like for example Turkey, France, all these kinds of countries, they're growing in esports populations.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting more players, they're getting more viewers, these kinds of things. But then regions like North America, where they've been around for a very long time, like especially in the LCS, for example, it just slowly declines because I think people are just sick of it. They've had enough. It's the same thing every year. There's no expectations of these teams doing well because they are basically minor league teams. They go to these world championships, they fail, they come back, they do the same again. They fail, come back. Do you know what I mean? It's like a recurring cycle.
They're also like the meme team at international
Exactly,
competitions.
yeah.
Kind of like England has been for the past 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
or maybe 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Like the Euros and Worlds, it's like, oh, let's jokingly say England are going to bring it home.
Yeah.
Now it's changing, but not quite for the LCS yet.
Yeah. It's like, it was like a thing where if you follow them, it's like years ago, it was like a thing where you follow it and it's like, wow, TSM could actually make it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, TSM are fucked.
They can't even make out of groups.
Yeah, exactly. They're fucked. Even when you look at teams like Cloud9, you don't think they're going to do very well. I mean, I guess they could surprise some, but realistically, they're not going to achieve much. Whereas in leagues like the LEC, I think the LPL obviously is very, very good. LCK especially. These kinds of leagues have well, I think the LCK and the LPL are different because they have different ways of retaining viewers.
Okay.
You know
more than me on that one.
Yeah, so the LCK has Faker. If the LCK lost Faker, that's viewership plummeting.
That's like,
I can guarantee
that's like your Messi type deal.
Yeah,
right?
it's your Messi. It is your Messi. It's the Ronaldo of Serie A kind of thing. You lose that, you lose everything. And it's just the biggest brand gone. And we would have thought that would have happened with the LEC with Perks gone, and the LCS would have done really good. But it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think that was because Reckless went to G2. Obviously, G2 is the most popular team in the league. But then Fnatic, without Reckless, they've actually played better than G2 with Reckless. So it's like it sort of it has these storylines,
yeah.
And Misfits have done well. Nobody, like, this team was placing like 5th, 6th, and now they're doing really well. Then you've got Rogue, Mad Lions, all these teams, they're all very competitive, and it's a very competitive region.
Excel are kind of like the NA of the LEC.
Yeah, of course.
Which is a storyline within itself. Can they make playoffs finally?
And the most competitive leagues are always the ones that usually get the most viewership. Whereas the LCS is always it's basically the top 5 versus everybody else. And you really only watch the top 5. Nobody gives a shit about Golden Guardians, Immortals. Like, who fucking cares? These teams aren't ever going to go to Worlds. They're not going to do much. Who really gives a shit? What's the point in watching these teams? There really is none. Whereas in the LEC, you've got nearly almost every team in that league has a chance, right, of making playoffs. Maybe bar a few.
Even like, I think, did Vitality have like a 4% chance?
Vitality had a really good chance. Yeah, I mean,
I think they had like 4% though, but like then they just like subverted expectations, right?
Yeah, and they, Vitality got Selfmade, they got Leader, they got all these new players. Obviously Selfmade was from Fnatic, but Leader was very anticipated. He was a huge player before he joined the LEC. So again, there's just huge expectations, and this league is doing very well. I think the talent choices they've made is very good. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the LEC, but they get new talent in.
I see what's what.
Yeah, they get new talent in quite regularly now. Whereas the LCS just seems stagnant to me.
Yeah, and they're bringing them in from the European regional leagues, right, which then kind of can siphon off some of the interest from the LEC into those regional leagues, and also vice versa, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. We will never know why. These leagues are losing viewerships or gaining viewership. We'll never have access to that. We can just make assumptions based on what's happening. But I think it's not a good sign when North America, arguably, the second, maybe the third biggest region outside of like Asia and Europe, is declining when it comes to viewership. But then on the flip side, in Valorant, North America is the fucking most dominant region by miles in terms of viewership. It's incredible. and you've got organizations like Sentinels. Nobody, Sentinels. They're not the biggest organization. They're not a Cloud9. They're
Nobody
not
gave a shit until VALORANT.
exactly. Nobody gave a shit, and they've seen astronomical growth.
Mm-hmm.
All because they had Tens, Sinatra, these kinds of big names. And it's just
Washed
been
up Shazam.
yeah, exactly. They are like they're not. These players are not the highest caliber in CS. They never were. Tens is not simple. Tens is not Zaiwu. Yet he's the best player in this game. You know.
Yeah. I
But
actually think I have the perfect example to drive home what we're referring to here, and they're both. It comes from two recent deals. So Schalke selling their LEC slot, right? I think it was $32.5 million. It equates to. So that's just for the LEC slot in the European competition, and then Complexity, founded in 2003, part of CGS, like legacy org, one of like the founding esports orgs, if you want to put it that way, just sold in its entirety for 27 mil.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Like
it's ridiculous.
The LEC slot, LEC's been around since 2018, technically, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
or did it start in 2019?
It used to be the EU LCS, 2018, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and like in no time at all, like there's more value in that than there is buying the organization, which it's been around since 2003 and has got obviously Jason Lake attached to. He's very popular, but like, I think it goes to show like how important it is to have assets in esports.
I was just about to say
because
assets, yeah.
Besides the GameStop Performance Center, which is on the same grounds as like Cowboys facilities and training capabilities and everything they got there. Besides that, I think they maybe partner with Blast for Blast Premier. I think, but apart from that, they don't own like franchise slots in any of the biggest games, right? And
I mean,
that's where we are in esports now.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's like I always use this example because I always think it's perfect to look at how other regions go about spending their money compared to Complexity on other NA orgs, right, and how they use their money. So Damwon, obviously formerly world champions, these players used to live in terrible conditions. They weren't doing best in terms of like financially, etc., etc. And yet you've got these massive fuck off stadiums, training facilities, all these kinds of things, and yet your teams don't do anything. This team was literally living in like bunk beds or whatever, and won the world championships. And now they have the fucking backing to like go into VALORANT, go into
Kia naming sponsor,
the Kia sponsorship, all these kinds of things. That is how they grew their brand and grew their team, etc. And that, it just goes to show you don't need these things. Obviously they help if you have a massive fuck off facility, and you can sort of do these kinds of things. But we're not sports. We're not. It's not. It's more mental than it is physical, in my opinion. Like esports in general, I think if you have the right mindset, it's much more important than being physically capable to do the job. So that's what I believe, and I think that NA orgs really piss away money when it comes to things like that. Again, it's same with salaries, so over bloated. It's just losing these teams money, and then especially when you're pissing away money to assets that don't really matter. I'm sure the Complexity Valorant team, they get probably quite a few thousand per month. I don't know the exact amount, and yet they're basically shit. I'm not going to beat around the bush. They're not good. They don't qualify for events. They barely get any screen time. So what's the point? You don't have anything in this esport. You have no assets. You have names, and that's it. And they're not big names.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you one player on their lineup.
Exactly. It's like if I asked you, name me one Sentinels player, you could probably tell me.
Sure.
Exactly. But on these teams, nobody knows, nobody cares, and it's all well and good saying you want to get these facilities and build people up, and I never saw the point of it. I think you need a good scouting team.
Proper coaches would be nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actual coaches instead of people just saying, right, next scrim.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's watch your VOD.
Yeah. In VALORANT especially, I'm just going to keep referring to VALORANT just because it's the thing
that's your thing, mate.
At the minute. Yeah.
Of course.
In VALORANT especially, it's very, very easy to be a scout because you can see these players that are like 15, 16, just like, because you need to be 16 to play in the VCT, which is the official league. You can see these players and can see that they have talent, so pick them up, but instead you still stick with the shit. Why are you keeping the shit? You have a solid opportunity to get good players who are unsigned, and yet you can't be bothered to do that. It blows my mind, honestly, because it just goes to show that organizations, most of them, don't have a fucking clue when it comes to scouting, when it comes to, I would say the major orgs, yeah, like top notch. TSM, they do a great job. Immortals, they do a great job. But like Complexity, fucking shit. Evil Geniuses let go of some of their best players. Alexander, for some reason, blows my mind. Potter's still on that team, blows my mind.
Oh, really?
These kinds of things, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it's ridiculous. Andbox, they're pretty good. They got Yay, a huge talent from CS, and now he's going to go for fucking loads. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just goes to show how important it is to have assets and have brands and have good, solid names and teams that actually win. Otherwise, it's pointless.
Yeah, you don't no participation trophies
exactly.
over in esports.
There is
thankfully,
none. There is none, and
even with prize pools, they're so heavily skewed towards the top 2 teams, really.
Yeah,
and if you're 7th or 8th, and then if you're an org, you're getting 10%,
exactly,
up to 20% in some generous cases, right? Say you might get 10% of 25k. Something like that, and that's not going to keep the lights on at your fancy 3-story facility.
Yeah. See, I think one of the most valuable things, especially, I mean, in Valorant, I'm just going to keep referring to this. It's probably the same for all esports. Is screen time for your organization, right? This is why
your sponsors,
exactly. This is why Complexity done pretty well in CS, because their brand was continuously doing well, playing in tournaments. You know, they played back in like this, years ago when I was a child. They were
CGS
still,
and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you were actually maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, when I was literally an infant, they were playing in like Counter-Strike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had like Fraud, Shroud, like Nothing, all these kinds of legendary players playing in these tournaments. They've been around for so long, and to go for that valuation is fucking awful.
27 mil,
it's
mate.
Embarrassing.
I think Jerry Jones, the owner of Dallas Cowboys, was trying to offload them basically because it's just not working out. So that's why it went for that cheap.
No, it's valuable screen time that's important, And this is actually a quarry I have with some org owners. They're really displeased because in Valorant especially, I would say about 80% of the teams that are like major brands, nobody sees them. They're not on stream. Do you know what I mean? Like this most recent tournament, there was like they didn't stream the open qualifier. I was streaming it, and I was watching a coach POV that was being streamed.
Oh yeah, well, I actually tuned into your first ever stream, not once ever, and you had like 5 or 6 different Twitch streams open.
And I had
because there's so many matches going on, and the viewership is so diluted. So even if they are getting screen time, it's probably not. Well, it's not to the maximum audience a lot of the time as well. So that shows you need to be in that prime time slot.
Yeah, it's stupid. I mean, I think I was watching like the TSM match.
Yes, yeah.
And bear in mind, this is an open qualifier. Obviously, they're going to win, but people still want to watch it. This is the whole point. They want to see these.
They want to see them speedrun it.
Exactly, but like if you don't actually have anyone to watch the game and record it and cast it, then it's pointless. But this is what organizations want, because what I'm saying is that Valorant as an esport especially is very favored to the teams that do well, and very like unvaluable or disvaluable to the teams that don't do well.
Right.
So you can quite easily fade into obscurity if you don't do well. And I think it's the same for like Counter-Strike as well. And it might be the same for each esport, I don't know. But we have a system in place where teams are punished for doing bad. Whereas, let's say
which is good.
which is good. Which is good.
That encourages people to get better and then invest into the ecosystem.
That's true. But if you compare that to like sports, where let's say the NBA, I don't know, or football,
let's go to one we know.
Let's go football, for example. Let's say fucking Watford You know, let's say they get relegated one season, all their matches are still going to be streamed, though, aren't they? Or
Mm-hmm.
like people are still going to report about them. You know, on Sky Sports News, they're still
Yeah.
going to go,
Well,
"Oh,
they've
Watford
got
is
like
losing."
the legacy, like 100-year history
Yeah,
and
exactly.
of
Do you know what I
brand
mean?
building and the
Um,
highs and lows and the narratives that go along with it, right?
exactly. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like people still report on the worst teams, even in the biggest leagues in
Mm-hmm.
sports. But we don't do that here. Like we only care about the top 20. Why
Yeah.
would we give a shit about any other orgs? But
Yeah.
it's
We're not at
so
that level. Like Scunthorpe
exactly.
United has dedicated writers. So
Yeah, do you know what I
in
mean?
like League One, League Two, I
Yeah.
don't even know. But I want to shift gears a little bit because we're getting towards like the hour mark, and I don't want to take up your whole evening. I'm sure you've got 17 scoops you need to break tonight.
I do have a bit of work. Yeah, not gonna lie.
But I want to I guess end it off with like looking at where you're at now. So you finish university and you basically land a job straight away, like
Yeah,
full time in journalism. So one, I just want to get your thoughts on how that worked out and if you expected it and things along those lines, as well as so you were at esports and then you landed at Upcomer prior to its launch and were there ready for, well, you were even reporting on stuff before it officially launched and it was going out
yeah,
on daily esports, is it?
yeah. It was going on daily esports. Yeah,
So I guess two-pronged thing is I want to get like your experience going straight from full-time education, well, what I believe is full-time
it
education,
was full time education. Yeah,
into full-time work in like your passion, and then also the choice you made to work where you're working now.
yeah. Well, I think in reference to like the first question, it was very much enjoyment based. I very much enjoyed writing, and I didn't enjoy doing my university degree.
Right.
So I would spend as little time as possible doing my uni degree, and the majority of my time was spent doing work I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
um, so it was quite easy for me because you know this isn't the likelihood for most students, but I didn't really have that many exams. I only had like a few.
You just have to
Um,
sit there and ponder about life, right?
exactly. You know, it's like it wasn't like a maths degree or a law
Mm.
degree. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a very sort of. I'm not saying it was easy, but it was like you know, it wasn't an
Yeah.
intensive degree by any chance, or by any stretch. Sorry. Um, but yeah, so it was quite easy to transition because I was sort of used to, you know, getting up at a certain time, working at this time, you know, because I've done it for ages. You know, I woke up every single day knowing that I was going to have a meeting for esports kind of thing. So I sort of got into the routine for years, really. So I would say that's probably the most important thing is building that routine, where you're just doing full time anything instead of being a slob that wakes up at like 6 p.m. every day, you
Right.
know, which I was. I was at that point at one stage in my life. I'm sure we all were, you know. But yeah, I would say making myself a routine years in advance helped me loads, helped me
Right.
massively. The transition wasn't that difficult. Um, but yeah, so I would say it's been pretty easy. But yeah, so I joined Upcomer when it first launched. Well, we didn't launch until like April, I think. I can't even remember. It's months ago now. But obviously, I was there since January. It was very stressful having to sort everything out. But yeah, we got through it. So, and the only reason I think I got that job is because of Colin. Actually, well,
So from the
it was
score, who went over
yeah,
to
it was
Upcomer?
Colin who was employed first from Monash, the CEO of Luminosity or
Enthusiast, yeah,
whatever, and he's
yeah.
there at Enthusiast. Yeah, I don't know his specific title, but he was the one who like formed the whole project, and he hired Sean and Colin, obviously head of video, head of editorial, but Sean didn't know about me. Sean didn't have a fucking clue who I was, which is understandable. I had like 1,000 followers, I think, at that point. Nobody knew who I really was. But Colin, on the other hand, because he covered like a story of mine, I think it was like the Dota article, like years ago, where it was like Valve are suing them. He made like a video on it, and that's how he knew about me. And Manash was like, "Okay, who do you recommend to be this guy?" And he said me, and that's how I got in contact with
When you
Manash
say this
and
guy, what's this guy? I
the
think I know,
reporter
but
the
right.
reporter for the company. They wanted a dedicated reporter. So they told me, they said, we enjoy your news work. You can continue doing that. That's fine. But we expect you to report news.
So do you have a quota or a mandate as to how many stories you have to
There
break?
was a quota, but I think it sort of shifted.
Because that's a dangerous precedent to set.
Yeah.
Because if you're behind, you may have to put out a story you're not 100% on.
Yeah, and I think we did have a discussion about this, and we said about what was going on. But right now, it's completely my freedom. I think I've earned that freedom, which is understandable. Menashe's very happy with my work, and I'm very happy with his input. Especially Sean and Colin, they've both been killing it as well in terms of what they've been doing. But yeah, I would say it was very flexible for me. They don't tell me, oh, you have to be up at this time and you have to get off at this time. It's very much more of a
they trust you
have
to get shit done.
This is a deadline, but you also have to do this. This is the deadline. Get it done. That's it.
Right.
And if you don't follow the deadline, you're out. You know what I mean? Which is completely understandable. So yeah, that's been my journey, really.
Right. And you're not really a journalist in this day and age unless you have a podcast. So, are you planning on expanding out into the forms of media?
Oh yeah, I'm planning. I think I'm planning a Valorant centered podcast where
you have to capitalize on the fact that you're the main man.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Until some young whippersnapper comes in and just blows you, like Bloop with Jacob. Comes in and just takes over out of nowhere. Exactly. You need to capitalize on it while you can.
Exactly. I think it's already starting to happen as well. There's a writer, I think his name's Utilex or something. He's 17, and he works for VLR, which is the HLTV of Valorant, and also Coco as well. I think that's his username. He's a French journalist.
Right.
He's under Nell at one PVR, whatever. They both cover Valorant news. They've both done incredible reporting. And Utilex actually really fucked me off because he got my TSM scoop, which I was going to post literally the day after he posted his. So I'm like, well, fuck this guy. But obviously he's doing great work,
Yeah.
And he got everything right. So it's already starting to happen, which is kind of worrying. But, it's just what you got to do to keep up, right? And they've done a great job. So, yeah, I will be creating a podcast. I think it'll be with players, and it will go more in depth as to how these sort of teams operate. I think salaries will probably be discussed as well. Just sensitive topics that I know players can trust me to talk about, professionally. That'll be sort of how it goes, I guess.
Right, yeah. Let's end this on a fun question, and then I can get involved in this if it makes you feel more comfortable.
Sure.
But what's the biggest scoop that has already come true now? So say a player transfer or whatever.
Yeah.
That you couldn't get over the finish line.
That I couldn't get over the finish line?
Yeah, so it's come into fruition now. So it's not upsetting anything or fucking anything up.
It was Tens completing his deal with Sentinels,
right?
Because obviously he was on a loan.
Yes, from Cloud9.
And I think Kevin Hitt broke the story where it was. Yeah.
Did he report 6 mil or 7 mil or something?
Yeah, he reported all the details that I was given. And it was I think I was going to report it 2 days later. But again, I was worried about figures because I had got it wrong previously. I needed to confirm it. But he got it right, and he it really fucked me off because I was working on this for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably
that's the biggest one you couldn't get over the finish line.
Yeah. That and the TSM move.
Which was that? What was that one?
That was for Leviathan, who recently joined the Valorant team.
I can't say I've heard of that person.
No, it's
they sound lovely though.
Yeah, he's a nice kid.
With that name. Well, mine's a little bit different, but I would say I actually got the story over the finish line, and then the powers that be above me had to retract it, and it was about Jens Hilger, so the guy who runs Bitcraft Ventures, who co-founded ESL, who is the chairman of G2. So obviously a very powerful and influential guy in the industry. Plenty of fuckery, of course, having a stake in both the Esports Observer and the Story Mob at the same time, and then 40 other companies and stuff, right? But regardless, I put out the biggest story of my career by far was on him. This was 2019. and it got taken down within an hour because people above me were afraid of legal ramifications and stuff. So like I managed to get it over the finish line, but I think only like 10 people saw it. And now if you ask around like reporters and stuff to this day, I think there's like me and Richard Lewis who are like very aware of the story, and that's about it.
I
But
mean,
like,
can you
that's the
talk about the
biggest
story,
break.
or can you not?
On here, it's probably not the best thing to do because I will get probably sued the fuck out of. But like, I will say it's about company culture at Bays Esports Solutions, which is like his data company. So it kind of does what Grid does, and others like PandaScore and stuff. So they get the data from, say, League of Legends, for example. I think they might have a deal like the LEC actually. But it was about not very good company culture over at Bays, and they had another company called Shadow.gg, which was closing, and yeah, it wasn't great in the office for certain people. So I hear, but like I spent about 2 months on it.
Yeah,
got over the finish line, and about an hour and 3 angry calls later, I think it was, it got taken down, and that was that, mate. So it exists in my dreams and in my mind. Is really frustrating because not because it's the biggest story for me, but because it was basically giving people who didn't have a voice.
Yeah.
In a, I don't like the word toxic, but in a toxic environment, you know. So quite a little bit different. I think it's like optic deals and stuff like that. Like that, some other details on like the NRG and optic stuff that I couldn't get over the finish line. Bits like that, but they're definitely the Ends Hilger stuff. But anyway, mate, like I want to say, like I'm really glad to see that you're absolutely smashing me out the park now on all metrics, and that you managed to make it happen, as you say, fairly like lacking friction towards the end when coming out of education, knowing everything about life and the way it works and reality and everything through philosophy, and now applying that.
Still going through that. Don't worry.
There we go. Yeah, you never really figured out. Exactly. Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably one of the only degrees you come out like knowing less than you do going in.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. Actually.
But yeah, well, where can people follow you on Twitter and such? What's your user?
So it's at George and then C, and then it's short for Geddes, so GED. So
why can't you get the original username? What's going on?
I can't. Someone took it.
And you haven't got the Twitter connect?
No. I don't have Twitter connections. What do you think?
Verified, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what the fuck happened there.
Did you do a happy dance when you got verified? Or like
No.
punch the air?
No.
You didn't at least punch the air?
No, I don't give a shit about Twitter verification.
No.
Okay. I used to care like
until
a lot.
You got it.
Yeah. And now I got it's like, who the fuck gives a shit?
You get a verified tab, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think the only good thing about it was that like people recognize me as like a verified journalist or a credible journalist now. Yeah. Because it's seen as like a credible thing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a status symbol on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's about it, really. Other than that, I couldn't really give a shit.
Fair play, man. Fair play.
Yeah, that's just how it goes.
I appreciate you coming on and speaking to me. I do appreciate that. And again, man, I'm glad that things are going well. And maybe one day I'll enter the roster move space.
Sure. Come through. There's not many people.
I'll get my ass kicked, and you can mentor me, mate.
Yeah.
Even I'm like 5 years your senior or something.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Right, thank you everyone for watching. If I do another one, I'll catch you then. Cheers.
Yeah.